Welcome back. I'm going to read to you today Chapter 23, Familiar Strangers. In the commissary, the Blissworm was standing on a table entertaining all the pirates and sailors from Starboardia. The Space Worm theatrically reenacted the twins' encounter with the Polycrabs on Lollipopagist and used its sound effects, large gestures, and impersonations to tell an exciting tale. Although it never articulated any words, the Dalai Lama crew seemed to have understood everything the worm was saying. They oohed and ahed at the descriptive story. Some even covered their eyes like they were watching a scary movie. "You're telling us that Alex and Connor found you in a hole the polycrabs dug to capture prey?" Winking Wendy asked. "Then you were all captured and taken to the polycrabs colony deep underground?" Siren Sue asked. "And after Connor rescued you from the Queen Polycrab's web, he detonated a massive bomb that vaporized the whole species?" Stinking Phoebe asked. The Blissworm nodded happily. They were a very attentive audience. All the pirates and sailors were astonished by the story. The Dalai Lama crew had never heard such an adventurous tale, and they were pirates. The commissary was still segregated. The characters from the fairy tale world glared at the characters from Connor's short stories from their table across the room. They were also astonished not by the events of the story, but the fact that the Dalai Lama crew understood everything the worm was saying. "How did they know what it was talking about?" Jack whispered to Goldilocks. "They're all from Connor's imagination," Goldilocks said. "They must share some kind of language." Red casually slid into the seat across the table from Jack and Goldilocks. Her eyebrows were raised and she pursed her lips together tightly to keep her from smiling. She obviously had a secret she was dying to share. Red leaned across the table so only Jack and Goldilocks could hear her. "Have you noticed how familiar all these characters are?" Red whispered. Jack and Goldilocks stared at her blankly. Was she just realizing that now? "Can't say that I have," Jack said. "Have you, Goldie?" "Familiar?" Goldilocks said. "Whatever do you mean?" Red was so eager to talk about it she didn't realize they were being sarcastic. Her eyes enlarged like her theory was scandalous. "All of the characters on that side of the odd ballroom are from Connor's short stories, right?" Red said. "But I'm not convinced they're entirely from his imagination. I think many of the people in this room are based on people that he knows. People like us." Red swiped the table like she was laying out a winning hand of cards. Jack and Goldilocks both sighed. Sometimes Red was so naive, it was impressive. I think you're onto something, Red," Jack said. "Nothing gets by you," Goldilocks said. Red was so pleased with herself she shimmied her shoulders. Captain Auburn Sally walked by their table and Red waved her down. "Excuse me, lady with the big hat," Red called out. "Come sit with us." Red patted the seat next to her. The captain looked around the room to make sure Red wasn't speaking to someone else, and then sat down next to the Queen with no clue of her intentions. "It's rather silly for us to share such close quarters and not get to know each other," Red said. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Queen Red Riding Hood. These are my subjects, Jack and Goldilocks." Jack and Goldilocks glanced at each other. "Subjects?" "It's nice to meet you," Auburn Sally said. "I'm Captain Auburn Sally of the Dalai Lama." "Tell me everything," Red said. "Where are you from? What do you do for a living? What are your hobbies? Etc., etc." "Well, like I said, I'm the captain of a ship," Auburn Sally said. "We're the only all-female vessel in the Caribbean, but one of the most feared in the sea. We spend our days sailing across the ocean looking for buried treasure. Occasionally we'll meet other women like ourselves on the run from their past, and we invite them to join our crew." Red was so charmed by the captain, she gently placed her hand over Auburn Sally's. The Queen smiled like they were long-lost sisters who had been finally reunited. "You must be me," Red said. Auburn Sally was confused. She understood what Red was insinuating, but the Queen didn't seem to notice that Goldilocks could have been the captain's identical twin. "Are you sure?" the captain asked. "No offense, but I would have guessed someone else was inspired by you." The captain gestured to the cyborg Queen in the corner of the commissary. She was sitting in a throne mode as Commander Neuters tightened the wires around the gears on the top of her head. "Don't be so humble," Red said. "I'm certain you're me. The similarities are uncanny. Both of our names start with colors. We're both very powerful and accomplished women, and we're both very flamboyant dressers. My style is more privileged and pampered, but the dirty and daring look works well for you." Auburn Sally looked to Jack and Goldilocks for help. "Play along, or it will never stop," Goldilocks whispered to the captain. "I think you're right, Red. Auburn Sally is definitely based on you." "You're practically the same person," Jack said, and nodded overdramatically. Red happily turned to the crew of the Dalai Lama. She saw the pirates from a completely different perspective. "Pardon me for a moment," she said. "I'm going to introduce myself to our crew. Oh, what fun this has turned into!" The Queen skipped off to the table of pirates and sailors and introduced herself. Auburn Sally stared at Red like the Queen had just escaped from an asylum. "She's not sailing with a full set of sails, is she?" the captain asked. Across the commissary, the twins' mother was happy to see the characters finally warming up to one another. Charlotte took the intermingling as a sign that she was succeeding as a glorified babysitter. Things had gotten significantly easier now that they were in the hospital. There was plenty of room for all the characters, no one was breaking Charlotte's possessions, and everyone was getting along for the most part. There was only one thing missing to make it a more enjoyable experience: Alex and Connor. Spending several hours a day with her son's characters made Charlotte miss Connor even more. He had never shared his stories with his mom, so it was nice for her to see them come to life piece by piece. Charlotte heard a familiar jingle and turned toward the door of the commissary. It swung open and her heart sank to the pit of her stomach. They had company. Dr. Sharon Jackson, a clinical psychologist at St. Andrew's Children's Hospital, stepped into the commissary with an elderly couple. Sharon was an African-American woman with curly black hair who wore several bracelets around each of her wrists that jangled as she walked. "And this is the new storybook commissary," Dr. Jackson told the couple as she escorted them inside. The psychologist was floored to see that it was filled with so many strange people. The elderly couple cleansed their lenses of their glasses to make sure their eyes weren't deceiving them. All the characters in the room froze and went dead silent. They had been caught. "Hi, Sharon," Charlotte said. "What brings you to the new commissary?" "Charlotte, meet Mr. and Mrs. Carmichael," Dr. Jackson said. "They are two of the donors who paid for the commission of the new wing. I was just giving them a tour of the facilities." "Who are all these people?" Charlotte's options were limited. Telling her co-worker the truth was out of the question, and there were very few lies that could explain why so many costume adults were gathered around. Coming up with something that wouldn't get her and Bob into trouble at the hospital was nearly impossible. "They're performers," Charlotte said. "Bob and I wanted to surprise the patients and staff with a little entertainment." The characters were impressed by how convincing Charlotte's lie was, especially one that had been thought of on the spot. Dr. Jackson and the Carmichaels were touched with Bob and Charlotte's generosity. "Oh, how wonderful," Mrs. Carmichael said. "They remind me of the circus. When is the performance? We'd love to see it." "Tomorrow night," Charlotte fibbed again, "in the multi-purpose room at 8 o'clock. "It'll be a late night for us, but we'll be there," Mr. Carmichael said. "That is so kind of you, Charlotte," Dr. Jackson said. "What show are they performing? Is it something I know?" Charlotte eyed the characters for assistance, but none of them were helpful. They watched the twins' mother like she was a show herself. "They're still figuring it out," she said. "That's why everyone is dressed so differently. They're going to rehearse all the shows in their repertoire for me, and so I can select one that will be best for the children." "We'll be looking forward to it," Dr. Jackson said. "May I spread the word, or are you still keeping it under wraps?" Charlotte laughed. "I guess the cat is out of the bag now," she said. "Feel free to let everyone know." "Sounds terrific," Dr. Jackson said. "The kids are going to love it. We'll let you get back to rehearsals." Dr. Jackson escorted the Carmichaels out of the commissary. Charlotte faced the characters in a panic. Her face turned bright red, and she was thinking only in swear words. "Looks like we're putting on a show," she said. "Anyone have an idea of what we should do?" "William Shaky Fruit has a collection of hysterical plays, but I don't think that we can pull one of them off by tomorrow night," Red said. "Anyone else have a suggestion?" Charlotte asked. Trobella was the only character to step forward. She went to the center of the room, looked up at the fluorescent lighting, and spread her arms out like she was having a religious experience. "My time has come," she said in a trance. "Finally, life has presented me with an opportunity to show my purpose. At last, I have an outlet to combine all my talents for something that matters." "You mean besides being a queen?" Goldilocks asked. "Governing is just a side gig," Trobella said. "My true calling has always been the performing arts. I have the perfect performance for our predicament. It's the greatest story ever told." "Little Red Riding Hood?" Red asked. "The Prince of Thieves?" Robin Hood asked. Peter Pan asked. Trobella raised a finger to silence them. "No," she said. "The life and times of Queen Trobella." The Troll Queen flicked her hands through the air and mined falling confetti. The other characters slumped, even though their story was much better choice. "We need to start at once," Trobella said. "I'll write, direct, and narrate the performance myself, as nobody knows Trobella like Trobella. I'll need the pirates to build the sets and the cyborgs to adjust the overhang fireless torches." "Those are called lights," the Cyborg Queen said. "Now for casting," Trobella said. "The merry men will be my goblins. The lost boys will be my trolls. Handsome Jack will be my butter boy. Beautiful Red will play the title character, and Fat Goldilocks will be the creature that keeps us apart. I'm pregnant, Goldilocks said. Trobella winked at her. Of course you are. Can I have a bigger role? Peter Pan asked. I have the perfect part for you, Trobella said. No one can portray the highs and lows of life like a boy who can fly. You can symbolize my heart and personify the joy, the conflict, and the agony that I experienced in my very short life. Wicked, Peter Pan said. Trobella took charge of the room like a mad conductor, and her eyes widened with power. This will be the best surprise performance in the history of St. Andrew's Children's Hospital, Trobella declared. The audience is going to be so invigorated, so inspired, so dumbfounded. It's a good thing medical professionals are standing by. The characters throughout the commissary were a little frightened by the Troll Queen. None of them had given her the authority to direct the performance, but none of them were going to take it away from her either. Don't just sit there like porcelain porcupines. Let's get to work, Trobella ordered. Right away, the characters split into groups that she had assigned. Trobella walked around the commissary and met with each cluster privately to discuss her vision in greater detail. As they deliberated over the performance, the binder of short stories flipped open and the twins stepped out of the beam of light with Professor Wallet, Blaze, Whitney, Morph, and Bolt. The sibling characters looked around the commissary in wonder. The other characters were so busy planning the performance that they didn't even look up at the superheroes. Welcome to the other world, Alex told the siblings. Wow, Bolt said. A whole other dimension? This is so cool. There's no science to prove that this is possible, but I've always said that there was too much world for just one planet, Professor Wallet said. Connor whistled to get the room's attention. Hey, everybody, he said. These are our friends and siblings. They're superheroes and have agreed to help us fight the literary army. Can one of you sew? Trobella asked. I can transform into a sewing machine, Morph said. That'll do, Trobella said. You'll be in charge of costumes. The Troll Queen grabbed Morph's hand and pulled him into her group of set designers. Costumes for what? Alex asked. We were caught by one of my co-workers, Charlotte told the twins. I didn't know what to say, so I told her the characters were performers. The good news is she believed it. The bad news is we have to put together a show for tomorrow night. Oh, butter-in-law, Trobella sang to Charlotte. Is there a place we can get materials, or can we use the tablecloths and wood from the walls? Yikes, Alex said. I'd better get some supplies before Trobella tears this place apart. I could probably travel into the next story alone if you want to stay here and help, Connor said. Are you sure you won't need a hand? Alex asked. Positive, Connor said. Alex didn't want to desert her brother, but she knew he'd be fine on his own. Charlotte was glad Alex was sitting the next one out because it presented a wonderful opportunity, one she had been hoping for. Connor, I have today and tomorrow off, Charlotte said. Maybe I could join you in the next one. I would love to travel into one of your stories and see everything you've created. Having his mom tag along seemed like the worst idea in the world. It was like she wanted to walk him to his classroom when dropping him off at school. He forced himself to smile so he didn't hurt her feelings. Oh, great, he said through his teeth. Charlotte could tell her son wasn't thrilled by the idea. Only if I won't be a burden, she said sadly. I would hate to interfere. I was just happy to stay here and continue watching the characters. He couldn't tell if she was intentionally making him feel guilty or not, but the effect was strong. Obviously, it was something Charlotte really wanted to do, and Connor didn't have the heart to tell her no. It'll be totally fine, he said. I'd love to have you there. Charlotte clapped cheerfully. What's the next story about? She asked. It's called The Adventures of Blimp Boy, Connor explained. It's about a young archaeologist in the 1930s who travels across the world in a giant blimp. He searches through ruins and finds precious artifacts before they're stolen by tomb raiders, and then donates them to museums. How exciting, Charlotte said. Is there anything special we need to do while we're there? We have to find a magical talisman and an ancient pyramid, Connor said. Whoever possesses the talisman is granted control over a legion of mummified soldiers. Once we bring the mummies here, we'll finally be finished recruiting the army we need to face the literary villains. I can't wait, his mom said. Just let me find my purse. Alex, if you see Bob, tell him I briefly stepped into another dimension with your brother. Charlotte searched the commissary for her bag. Alex gazed at Connor with her deepest sympathies. Good luck, she said. Connor sighed and shook his head. What could be better than an afternoon with mummies and Mom, he said. And that is the end of the chapter. The next chapter is chapter 24, The Adventures of Blimp Boy. I'll see you guys then.